All right, everybody, welcome back for another deep dive. And today, we're going to be looking at something pretty fascinating.
Yeah, definitely.
It's about this, obviously AI is kind of the hot topic these days. Everybody's talking about AI.
Yeah.
But, there's a lot of angles to it, right?
Yeah.
And this Chinese company, DeepSeek, is kind of approaching it in a different way.
Yeah, they're real.
And they're having a lot of success, so...
They are. They're having a lot of success and sort of putting a little bit of a thorn in the side of the U.S. efforts to sort of restrict the advancement of Chinese AI.
Yeah, and it's kind of interesting because it's, we'll get into it, but it's kind of...
It's a little bit of a roundabout way of them getting to where they've gotten.
Yeah.
But, it's a fascinating story.
Yeah, so let's start with kind of like the basics. I mean, we're talking about AI, and obviously, like, people have heard of ChatGPT. Everyone uses it now. But a lot of these AI systems require just mountains and mountains of data. Like, just phenomenal amounts of information that they have to be trained on.
Right, and that in itself poses some challenges. Like just the sheer amount of processing power required,
right?
The energy consumption, and then the cost, of course, of all of that.
Right, and so this is like one of the things that DeepSeek is addressing is they're kind of coming at it from an angle of like, how can we do this with a lot less data?
Exactly, and so the analogy that's often used is, imagine trying to understand everything in a library by reading every single book cover to cover.
Right.
That's essentially what these traditional large language models are doing.
Yeah.
And so what DeepSeek has done is they've kind of come up with this mixture of experts approach.
Okay.
And it's almost like instead of having to read every single book, they just know exactly which book to go to pull off the shelf.
Got it. Okay.
Get the answers to the question. So it's much more targeted.
So almost like instead of one giant AI brain, it's kind of like broken down into smaller AI brains. They specialize.
Yeah, it's like having a team of expert librarians. One who specializes in, physics, and another one who specializes in, history or literature. And so the model can look at a question, determine which expert is best suited to answer it, and then route the question to that module.
So, I mean, I guess like one of the questions would be like, is that slower?
Well, yeah. I mean, there is potentially a trade-off in terms of speed.
Okay.
But it's really a fraction of a second. Okay. So, when we're talking about, the vast improvements in efficiency and cost effectiveness and energy consumption, a fraction of a second delay in getting an answer is really negligible.
Right. And so this kind of brings us to this, the next part of the story here, which is how the U.S. got involved.
Right.
And this is pretty interesting because I guess like the U.S. was obviously concerned about China's AI development.
Absolutely. I mean, they're a major competitor on the world stage.
Yeah.
Right? And so there was a lot of concern about, them, taking a dominant position in AI technology.
And so they started, I mean, they came up with these restrictions on exporting these advanced chips to China.
Exactly. So specifically, they focused on something called interconnect bandwidth, which, in layman's terms, it basically refers to how fast data can move within a chip.
Got it. Okay.
And so they were trying to limit, the processing power of the chips that Chinese companies could get their hands on.
And I mean, this is where kind of NVIDIA kind of comes in.
Yeah.
The chip maker, they found a way to kind of get around this.
They did. I mean, they were very clever about it. And to their credit, they didn't actually break any laws.
Right. Yeah.
But they basically created a chip that technically complied with the bandwidth restriction, but was still incredibly powerful. Almost as powerful as their top-of-the-line chips at the time.
So how did they do that? I mean, how do you kind of like...
Well, it gets a bit technical, but essentially they found ways to optimize other aspects of the chip's architecture to compensate for the limitations on bandwidth.
Got it.
And, like I said, it was very clever. They didn't break any rules, but they definitely found a loophole.
Yeah. And so, I mean, I guess the big question is like, what does this mean for the future?
Right.
I mean, like, what does this mean for AI, or what does it mean for this competition between the U.S. and China?
Well, I think it really highlights the challenges of trying to regulate a field that's evolving as rapidly as AI.
Right.
by the time you put a restriction in place, somebody's already figured out a way around it. But I think it also raises questions about, the broader implications of this mixture of experts approach.
Right.
DeepSeek has shown that it's possible to achieve very impressive results with, significantly fewer resources. And so, what does that mean for the future of AI development?
Yeah.
Could this become the dominant paradigm? Could we see a shift away from these massive monolithic models to, more distributed systems? And, that could have implications for, the accessibility of AI.
Right.
If you don't need these massive data centers and huge amounts of processing power, could smaller companies, smaller organizations start developing sophisticated AI applications?
It's pretty mind-blowing to think about. I mean, like, that changes a lot.
It does.
It's the whole playing field.
Yeah.
So, I mean, like, for the listener, like, what do you think? I mean, like, how could this affect your life? How could this affect your job? If suddenly AI is a lot more accessible.
Yeah.
A lot more people are using it, a lot more applications are being developed. That's a whole new world.
It is. It's a really interesting thing to think about.
Yeah. So definitely something to ponder as we go forward. And thanks for joining us for another deep dive. We'll see you next time.
See you at Bye.
Every day.